You want to know what the backbone of a mid-sized tech company actually looks like. It does not look like those smiling engineers in the recruitment videos, with their ping pong tables and artisan cold brew. It does not look like the gleaming glass headquarters with the motivational murals and the meditation pods. No, the backbone of this industry looks like a basement server room in Newark that smells like burnt plastic, recycled air, and the distinct metallic tang of a catastrophe waiting to happen. It looks like me, Diana, staring at a wall of blinking LED lights at 3 a.m., nursing a Red Bull that tastes like carbonated regret, praying that the database cluster in Singapore does not crash before the Tokyo office opens. For 13 years, I have been the Senior DevOps Lead at Nexus Technologies. That is a fancy title for Professional Disaster Prevention Specialist. My job is simple. I take the logistical nightmare of keeping 47 million users connected across 14 time zones, and I make sure their data does not vanish into the digital void. I am the invisible hand. I am the reason your cloud storage actually syncs. I am the reason your quarterly reports do not corrupt at 11:59 p.m. on deadline day. The system we use is called CoreBridge. It sounds futuristic, right? Like something a Silicon Valley startup would name their AI assistant. In reality, CoreBridge is a patchwork monstrosity of code written in 2009 by a contractor named Steve, who probably died of caffeine poisoning at his keyboard. It is held together by digital duct tape, deprecated libraries, and a series of custom scripts that I, and only I, know how to navigate. It is a temperamental beast. You treat it right. You feed it the right configuration files, and it hums. You look at it sideways, or God forbid, you try to update it without asking permission, and it will crash the entire platform faster than a junior dev, pushing untested code to production. This particular Monday started like every other Monday for the last decade. I walked into the Network Operations Center, the hum of the cooling fans vibrating in my molars. The floor is covered in that industrial tile that was probably white once, but is now a shade of existential gray. I sat down at my workstation, the command throne, which is actually just an IKEA desk with a broken drawer that I claimed from the office purge 6 years ago. "Morning sunshine," grunted Marcus, my shift supervisor. Marcus looks like a Viking who discovered energy drinks. He was eating a breakfast sandwich that smelled like a biohazard. "Do not start with me, Marcus," I said. Logging in, the screen flickered green. My reflection in the monitor looked back at me. Dark circles under my eyes, deep enough to store data. Hair pulled back in a ponytail, so tight it was practically a debugging tool. "How is the Asian infrastructure?" "Fragile," Marcus mumbled, spraying crumbs. "Japan had a latency spike overnight. Australia is complaining about sync delays, and we have a warning light on the primary load balancer. It is the Monday morning traffic surge," I said, cracking my knuckles. "I will bypass the standard routing and manually distribute the load. Just keep the support team on standby." I typed fast. My fingers know this keyboard better than they know the touch of another human being. That is sad. Is it not? That is the life. You trade intimacy for uptime. You trade your youth for a pension that probably will not exist when you get there. Within 15 minutes, I had rerouted 3 data streams out of Sydney, bribed a vendor contact in Tokyo with a promise of priority support, and manually patched the load balancer before the automated system could trigger a platform-wide panic. The warning light blinked off, green, beautiful, soothing green. See, people think software runs on servers. It does not. It runs on the sheer, unadulterated stubbornness of people like me who refuse to let entropy win. The universe wants chaos. It wants server crashes and data corruption and junior developers pushing commits on Friday at 4:59 p.m. I am the wall against the chaos. By the way, before I tell you how this whole house of cards came crashing down thanks to a pair of designer sneaker-wearing morons, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and give this a like. It is the only dopamine hit I get these days, besides watching my enemies get locked out of their own systems. It helps the algorithm or whatever. And frankly, I need the validation because my therapist ghosted me. Okay, back to the grime. I was feeling good. I was feeling like a god of infrastructure. I had my lukewarm energy drink. I had my green status lights. And I had the illusion of control. But you know what they say about the illusion of control. It is usually shattered by someone with a teeth-whitening addiction and a Stanford MBA they coasted through on daddy's donations. At 9:30 a.m., the door to the no-see swung open. Usually, nobody comes in here unless something is burning or someone is getting fired. The air pressure in the room actually changed. The smell of server heat was instantly replaced by an aggressive cloud of Tom Ford cologne and entitlement. I spun my chair around, standing there, looking like they just wandered off the set of a tech bro documentary about people who have never debugged their own code. We're Brandon and Madison. Brandon is the founder's son. He is 34, has the jawline of a tech conference keynote speaker, and the engineering skills of a motivated houseplant. He spent the last 4 years on a digital nomad sabbatical in Bali, which I assume is code for doing mushrooms at co-working spaces. Now he was back, wearing a hoodie that cost more than my monthly rent, a title that meant nothing, Chief Innovation Officer, and clinging to his arm like a browser extension you cannot uninstall was Madison. Madison was a lot. She was a former wellness influencer turned operations consultant. She had eyes that were dead inside, but surrounded by perfect, microbladed brows. She was holding a tablet, like it was the sacred scrolls of disruption. Diana. Brandon boomed, flashing a smile that was all caps and no substance. Just the person we wanted to see. My stomach dropped. The same feeling you get when you see a deployment notification you did not authorize. Brandon, I said, not standing up. To what do I owe the pleasure? The espresso machine is broken, if that is what you are looking for. Oh no, we are not here for espresso. Madison chimed in. Her voice was high, airy, like she was narrating a meditation app for tech executives. We are here to observe. Brandon's dad thinks it is time we really understood the core of the operations. You know, optimize things. Optimize. I hate that word. Optimize is corporate. Speak for fire. The people who know what they are doing and replace them with an AI chatbot that hallucinates solutions. Optimize. I repeated flatly. Well, right now I am optimizing a database cluster that is preventing 12 million users from losing their work. So observe away. Just do not touch anything. Brandon laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound, like a failed API call. Always such a firecracker. Diana, that is what Dad loves about you. The grit. But we are thinking, maybe we can modernize that grit. Make it scalable. He walked over to my bank of monitors, reaching out a manicured hand toward the screen, displaying the raw code of the CoreBridge configuration. Do not. I snapped. He froze. Relax. Diana, it is just code. It is not just code. Brandon, it is a live system. You touch that screen. You might accidentally trigger a rollback on the authentication server. You want to explain to 12 million users why they cannot log into their accounts during business hours. He pulled his hand back, but his eyes narrowed. For a second, the mask slipped. The chill tech bro vanished, and I saw the petulant rich kid who has never been told no in his entire life. "We have a meeting at 11, Brandon said, his voice dropping an octave. "Executive conference room. Be there. We need to discuss the future. I am busy keeping the present functioning." Brandon. It was not a request. Diana. They turned and left, trailing their cloud of expensive cologne. The door clicked shut. The silence that followed was heavy, like a system log, full of errors. Marcus looked at me over his sandwich. That felt ominous. "Yeah," I said, turning back to my screens. The green code blurred for a second. That felt like the beginning of the end. "Marcus, better update your LinkedIn." I did not know it then, but I was right. The latency spike in Japan was nothing compared to the disruption that had just walked out the door. I walked into the executive conference room at 11 sharp. The room was mostly glass, overlooking the main engineering floor, a cruel architectural joke. The executives could look down at the developers cramming bugs and sweating deadlines while sipping their matcha lattes. The founder, Old Man Harrison, was not there. That was the first red flag. Harrison was a dinosaur, a man who built this company with a single server rack and a lot of credit card debt in the early 2000s. He shouted. He drank bourbon at 9 a.m., but he respected the grind. If Harrison was absent, it meant the asylum was officially being run by the inmates. Brandon sat at the head of the table. Madison was to his right, typing furiously on her tablet, probably updating her girlboss vision board. The rest of the table was filled with the terrified faces of middle management, people who had mortgages and kids in college and were currently calculating how long their severance would last. "Okay, team, let us pivot," Brandon announced as I sat down. He did not even look up. "We have been analyzing the metrics with Madison's new insights." Madison's insights. I almost choked on my own spit. Madison's last job was marketing a meditation app that crashed every time someone tried to use it. Now she was analyzing infrastructure metrics. So, Madison started, standing up and dimming the lights, a PowerPoint projected onto the wall. The first slide just said, "Digital transformation in gradient purple font." I wish I was joking. "We feel that the tech stack is too reactive," Madison said, gesturing vaguely. "DevOps is always putting out fires. We want to be proactive. We want to use machine learning to predict the fires before they happen. That is called monitoring." I said from my seat, "We already do that. It is on 17 dashboards." A few nervous laughs from the back-end team. Brandon glared at me. "Funny, Diana, but we are talking about structural efficiency." For example, she clicked to the next slide. It showed a diagram of our server architecture. Why do we have so many redundant backup systems? It seems wasteful. Algorithm says we can cut 40% of our disaster recovery infrastructure and just use cloud failover. I leaned forward. The rage was starting to bubble up in my chest, hot and acidic, like a memory leak. "Madison," I said, keeping my voice dangerously low. "We run redundant backups because the primary cloud provider had 3 major outages last year. Each one would have cost us $6 million in lost revenue if we did not have local failover. You cut the redundancy. You are betting the entire company on a service-level agreement that has already failed us twice. Silence. The kind of silence where you can hear the HVAC system wheezing. Madison blinked. She looked at Brandon. Brandon looked at the table. "Well," Brandon said, clearing his throat, "that is just legacy thinking. We can negotiate better SLAs. I know a guy at AWS. You know a guy who controls Amazon Web Services pricing," I asked. "Is his name Bezos?" "Because that is who sets the rates." "Enough," Brandon snapped. "The point is the DevOps department is bloated. We have too many people monitoring systems that should be automated. We are paying for expertise we do not need." He looked directly at me. "We are going to implement a new AI-powered operations dashboard. No code integration. It is going to visualize everything, so anyone can run infrastructure. We will not need specialists hoarding institutional knowledge." I saw what this was. This was not about efficiency. This was about ego. They looked at me, a 43-year-old woman in a company hoodie, smelling like server room and stale coffee, and they saw a relic. They saw a bug in their sleek startup aesthetic. They hated that I knew where the bodies were buried. They hated that they needed me, so they decided they did not. For the next 3 weeks, the digital transformation began. It was a massacre. They fired Kevin, the database administrator. Kevin had a bad back and a worse attitude, but he could optimize queries in his sleep. They replaced him with an automated tuning tool that immediately corrupted the indexing on our largest customer database. They cut the overnight monitoring shift. "Nobody uses the platform at 2 a.m., Brandon argued, "except for the European customers who make up 35% of our revenue." You absolute walnut. I watched it all happen. I tried to fight. I sent emails. I created documentation. I highlighted the catastrophic risks in red bold font. Response from Brandon: "Thanks for the feedback, Diana. Let us stay positive and trust the process." Smiley face emoji. The smiley face, that passive-aggressive, soulless yellow circle. It was the digital equivalent of spitting in my coffee. Madison started shadowing me. That meant she sat in my office, scrolling through Instagram, occasionally looking up to ask stupid questions. Why are there so many configuration files? Can we not just use a template? One template for everything. Because Madison, I gritted out, slamming a patch command into the console. Different systems have different requirements. A template does not know if we are deploying to production or staging. You use the wrong config. You wipe customer data. You are so negative. She sighed, blowing a bubble with her gum. You really need to work on your energy. It is affecting the team culture. The team culture? The team was terrified. Everyone was walking on eggshells. The break room, once a loud place where we traded war stories and bet on deployment times, was now silent as a morgue. I went home that Friday and drank a bottle of cheap wine straight from the bottle while watching infomercials for standing desks. I felt dirty. Not the honest exhaustion of a hard day's debugging, but the slimy, spiritual grime of watching something you built get dismantled by children playing with production systems. I knew they were coming for me next. I could feel it in my bones, like a server warning. They could not fire me yet. I held the keys to the kingdom, the legacy override scripts, the custom patches I wrote that bridge the gap between the ancient CoreBridge system and the modern APIs. If I left, the bridge would burn. But they did not know that. They thought it was all just code. Anyone could run it. So I made a decision. If they wanted to drive the car, I would let them. But first, I was going to remove the steering wheel. There is a specific kind of calm that comes over you when you decide to let the world crash. It is not peace exactly. It is more like the silence in the eye of a hurricane. You know the destruction is coming. You know the systems are about to fail. But for this one moment, you just stand there and watch the metrics drop. I stopped arguing. That was the first sign. But they were too stupid to see it. Tuesday morning, stand up. I just nodded. We are reducing the deployment review cycle to 30 minutes, Brandon announced. Looking for a fight. Old Diana would have screamed. 30 minutes is not enough time to test, review, and validate. Unless you are pushing untested code directly to production and praying. New Diana just sipped her coffee. Great initiative. Brandon, very agile. Madison beamed. See, I told you she would get on board. It is all about mindset. Mindset. Yeah, my mindset was currently focused on orchestrating a localized apocalypse. I went back to my desk and started the digital housekeeping. See, over the years, I had written about 6,000 lines of custom scripts to keep CoreBridge functional. These were not official updates. It did not even know about half of them. They were patches, workarounds, digital band-aids. Example: when the user authentication system times out, which it does every Thursday during peak traffic, my script automatically pulls the session cache from the backup server so users do not get logged out. Without that script, the system just displays error 503 service unavailable, and 47 million users cannot access their accounts. I did not delete the scripts. That would be illegal. That would be sabotage. I am not a criminal. I am a professional. Instead, I simply centralized them. I moved all my custom operational scripts into a single encrypted directory on the local server, my user directory, the one tied to my active employee credentials. The logic was sound. These are my personal productivity tools. If I am employed, they run. If I am not employed, well, access is revoked. Security protocol. Right. Cannot have former employees accessing company systems. I spent 4 days doing this. I worked late. Madison stopped by once, seeing me furiously typing while burning the midnight oil. Love the hustle, she chirped. Just documenting everything for the transition. I said, not lying, making sure everything is in its right place. Perfect. We are bringing in the consultants from McKinsey next week to map the workflow. They are going to love what they find, I muttered. What was that I said? I hope they bring snacks. By Thursday, the trap was set. My legacy scripts were now the structural, load-bearing wall of the entire operation, and the detonator was my employment status. But I needed one more thing: a paper trail, a CYA document so thick it could stop a DDoS attack. I dug up an old compliance agreement from 2017, a dusty PDF regarding intellectual property of custom tools. Basically said that any code written by an employee specifically for personal workflow optimization remained the responsibility of that employee to maintain unless formally transferred to IT with a 90-day review period. It was a loophole meant to stop developers from claiming ownership of the company codebase, but the wording was vague. Personal workflow optimization. My scripts were personal. They optimized my workflow. I printed it out. I signed it. I buried it in a stack of onboarding documents I sent to HR for the new contractors. Nobody reads that garbage. It was filed away in the basement of bureaucracy. That Friday afternoon, the summons came. Outlook notification. Meeting with HR and strategy. 2 p.m. No subject line. No agenda. I knew what it was. It was the execution. I looked around the no-see one last time. The flickering monitors. The gray tiles. Marcus wiping hot sauce off his keyboard. I felt a pang of sadness. I loved this dump. I loved the chaos. But you cannot save a system when the admins are running rm/rf on the production server and handing you the blame. I opened my desk drawer. I took out my personal USB drive. Empty. I wiped it. I took my framed photo of my cat. Deceased. Much like my career, I took my stash of emergency ibuprofen. I put them in my bag. I stood up. Marcus, I said. Yeah, boss. If the authentication server asks for a level 5 handshake tonight, do not force it. Just let it cycle. Marcus looked at me, confused. Okay, you going somewhere? Just a meeting, I said. Hold down the fort. Always do. I walked to the elevator. My heart was pounding, a heavy, dull thud against my ribs. It was not fear. It was the adrenaline of an engineer walking into an ambush she already knew was there. I checked my watch, 1:58 p.m. The first wave of afternoon traffic, the post-lunch user surge, was scheduled to hit our servers at 3 p.m. Pacific. Timing is everything in technology. I smoothed my hoodie. I put on my best neutral face, the one that says, I am listening while plotting your destruction. I stepped into the elevator. Going up, the HR office smelled like fear and lavender diffuser. It was a small beige room designed to suck the soul out of you before they even handed you the paperwork. Brandon was there, sitting behind the desk like he was judging a hackathon. Madison was next to him, looking aggressively sympathetic, practicing her sad concern face. And in the corner, the HR rep, a woman named Patricia, who looked like she wanted to be literally anywhere else on Earth, probably debugging her own life choices. Have a seat, Diana, Brandon said, gesturing to the chair. The chair was lower than theirs. Classic power move. I remained standing. I prefer to stand. Brandon. My back acts up when I sit near incompetence. Brandon's jaw tightened. Okay, let us make this quick. We have been reviewing the structural changes for the DevOps department. And I asked, checking my watch, 2:05 p.m. Madison interjected, her voice dripping with fake honey. We feel that your traditional approach is not aligning with the AI-native, future-forward vision we have for the company. We need innovation. We need fresh perspectives. We need synergy. Synergy. I repeated. Is that the word for firing the only person who knows how the infrastructure works? See, Madison pointed a manicured finger at me. That negativity, it is toxic. Diana, we are building a culture here. You are acting like a maintainer. I am a maintainer. I said, I maintain the systems you break. But please, go on. Fire me. Say the words. Do not hide behind synergy. Be a big boy. Brandon. Brandon stood up, his face reddening. You are terminated effective immediately for insubordination and failure to adapt to new company direction. Patricia, from HR, slid a folder across the desk. We have prepared a severance package. 2 weeks' pay, standard NDA. If you sign now, we will not contest unemployment. 2 weeks, 13 years of keeping their platform running. 13 years of missed holidays and birthday dinners eaten at my desk. And they offered me 2 weeks. It was insulting. It was perfect. I did not look at the folder. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my employee badge. The plastic was cracked. The lanyard faded. It had my face on it from a decade ago. Looking hopeful, I did not recognize that woman anymore. I tossed the badge onto the desk. It landed with a plastic clack right on top of Madison's tablet. Keep the money, I said. I do not want your severance, and I am not signing your NDA. You have to sign, Brandon said, confused. Everyone signs, not me. Because if I sign that, I cannot consult, and you are going to need a consultant very, very soon. Brandon laughed. You think we cannot run this platform without you? We have the dashboard. We have the AI tools. I looked at him. I looked deep into his empty trust fund eyes. Brandon, you have a dashboard that displays metrics I curate. You have systems that run on scripts I wrote. You think you bought a self-driving car. You did not. You bought a manual transmission, and you just fired the driver while doing 80 on the information superhighway. I turned to the door. Wait, Madison said. You need to hand over your passwords. They are in the documentation. I said, just like you wanted it, accessible to anyone. I opened the door. The hallway air felt cooler, cleaner. I stopped and looked back one last time. Hey, Brandon. What? He snarled. The authentication server runs a session cache, refresh every 4 hours. It is due to cycle at 2:45 p.m. That is in about 35 minutes. So when the cache clears, it looks for an active user authorization to rebuild the connection to the core services. If it does not find one, it gets confused. We have IT. Brandon scoffed. Get out. Tell your dad I said good luck. I said. I walked out. I did not run. I did not cry. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button for the lobby, and descended. As the doors closed, I pulled out my phone. I opened the server admin app, the one on my personal device. Status connected, user D, Vasquez. Action logout. A prompt popped up. Warning, logging out will terminate active session scripts. Are you sure? My thumb hovered over the screen. I thought about the 2-week severance. I thought about Madison's digital transformation. I thought about old man Harrison, letting his idiot son play God with my life's work. I pressed, yes, status disconnected. I walked out of the building and into the afternoon sunlight. The air smelled like exhaust fumes and freedom. The clock started ticking. There is a coffee shop about 2 blocks from the office called The Terminal. It is the kind of place where the Wi-Fi is strong, the espresso is bitter, and the barista, a guy named Chen, knows your order before you sit down. I walked in at 2:20 p.m. The place was mostly empty. Just a few remote workers pretending to be productive. Early afternoon, Diana Chen asked, wiping the counter. Permanent vacation. Chen, I said, sliding into a booth by the window. Give me the largest, strongest thing you have. I want to feel alive. Chen poured. I drank. I propped my phone up against the sugar dispenser. I did not have access to the internal monitoring anymore. But I had something better. Down Detector, the public outage tracking site. I watched the Nexus Technologies status page. 2:35 p.m. Everything looked normal. Green across the board. 2:45 p.m. The cache refresh. Somewhere in the server room, a line of code was reaching out for my digital authorization and grasping nothing but void. In my mind, I could see the NO key. Marcus would be finishing his 3rd sandwich of the day. The AI dashboard would be displaying all green metrics. Then the first alert would trigger. It would not be dramatic at first, just a flicker. Maybe the user authentication service would suddenly show a response time of null. Marcus would frown. He would tap his keyboard. Hey, Tyler. Auth service just threw an error. Probably just a glitch. Tyler would say, chewing on his pen, restart it. Marcus would restart. And when he did, the system would look for my backup script, My script to reload the session data. Access denied. Back in the coffee shop. I watched my phone. 2:58 p.m. The down detector graph started climbing. User reports were coming in. 3:15 p.m. Nexus Technologies suddenly changed status from operational to degraded. 3:22 p.m. Degraded changed to major outage. Here we go, I whispered, taking another sip. Inside the Nook, the AI dashboard would be freaking out. The pretty visualizations Madison loved. They relied on clean data. When the data got corrupted, the graphs would start looking like a heart monitor during a cardiac arrest. Why is everything turning red? Madison would be screeching. Brandon, fix it. Brandon would be yelling at it. Reboot the servers. Turn everything off and on. It would reboot, and the reboot would trigger a cascade failure. Because the servers were looking for my scripts to handle the restart sequence. Scripts that no longer existed. Scripts that died the moment my access was revoked. By 4 p.m., Down Detector showed thousands of user reports. The graph looked like a hockey stick pointing straight up. Angry tweets were flooding in faster than the support team could ignore them. By 5 p.m., the Nexus Technologies Twitter account was flooded with complaints. Where is my data? Why cannot I log in? Been trying for 2 hours. This is unacceptable. The social media manager, a 23-year-old named Jordan, who usually just posted motivational quotes, was having a visible breakdown in their replies. We are aware of the issue and working to resolve it. Copy, paste, repeat. By 6 p.m., TechCrunch had picked up the story. Nexus Technologies experiences major platform outage. Users unable to access services. The article mentioned recent leadership changes. It mentioned headcount reductions in the operations team. It did not mention my name, but it might as well have. By 7 p.m., the enterprise clients started calling. Not the support line, the executive line, the one that goes directly to the C-suite. Harrison's phone was ringing off the hook with CFOs and CTOs demanding explanations, demanding refunds, demanding blood. By 8 p.m., the stock price had dropped 7% in after-hours trading. Financial Twitter was having a field day. Is Nexus Technologies the next tech implosion? Overpaid executives and undertrained staff. Classic Silicon Valley hubris. I ordered another coffee. I was not going anywhere. This was better than any streaming service. This was premium entertainment. My phone buzzed. A text from an old colleague at a competitor. Heard about Nexus. You okay? Need a job? I replied. I am better than okay. And I think I am about to get a very interesting offer. The chaos lasted 3 days. 3 days of cascading failures. Every time they fixed one thing, another broke. Like playing whack-a-mole with a system that had decided to become sentient and hostile. 3 days of angry customers. The support queue hit 15,000 tickets by Tuesday afternoon. They had to hire a crisis PR firm to manage the Twitter backlash. 3 days of Brandon and Madison learning the hard way that you cannot run a technology company on vibes, AI buzzwords, and venture capital confidence. Monday night, they tried to bring in outside consultants, a team from Accenture, expensive suits, expensive hourly rates, expensive coffee orders. They lasted 6 hours before admitting they had never seen a system architecture quite like this one. What they meant was, they had never seen a system held together by one person's institutional knowledge and sheer willpower. Tuesday morning, they tried to rebuild my scripts from scratch. Tyler, the junior dev, spent 14 hours trying to reverse engineer what I had built over 13 years. He managed to restore partial functionality to the login system. He also accidentally corrupted the backup database in the process. 2 steps forward, 3 steps into a brick wall. Tuesday night, the board called an emergency meeting. I know this because the meeting invite leaked to a tech reporter within hours. Nexus board convenes emergency session. Amid ongoing outage, the article included speculation about leadership change. It included the phrase, single point of failure. That phrase was me, and they were finally understanding what that meant. By Wednesday, the damage was extensive. 47 million users had experienced service disruptions. Enterprise clients were threatening to terminate contracts worth a combined $60 million in annual revenue. The stock price had dropped 18% since Friday. The company's market cap had lost over $200 million. I know all this because Marcus texted me updates. He was one of the survivors. He was also smart enough to know who had actually been keeping the lights on all those years. Diana. He wrote on Tuesday night, "It is a bloodbath. Nothing works. Brandon tried to fix it himself and accidentally wiped the staging environment. Madison is crying in the break room. They are bringing in consultants, but nobody knows your scripts." I replied with a single emoji. The shrug. Wednesday morning. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Diana." It was Harrison himself. "The founder. The dinosaur? We need to talk." "I am listening. My son made a mistake. Several mistakes. The board is not happy. We need you back." "Back," I repeated, as in employed as a consultant. "Emergency basis. Name your rate." I let the silence stretch. I could hear Harrison breathing, heavy, desperate, the sound of a man watching his empire crumble. "My rate is $800 an hour," I said. "Minimum 40 hours a week. 6-month contract. No oversight from Brandon or Madison. I report directly to you." "That is outrageous. That is the cost of expertise you just spent 3 weeks trying to eliminate." I said, "Take it or leave it. I have other offers." There was a long pause. "Done," Harrison said. "When can you start? I will be there in an hour." I walked back into the building at 10 a.m. Same lobby, same security desk, same terrible corporate art on the walls. But everything was different. The receptionist looked at me like I was a ghost. The elevator ride up was silent. When I stepped onto the engineering floor, people actually stopped what they were doing and stared. Marcus intercepted me halfway to the no-key. "Diana. Thank God. It is a disaster in there." Nothing responds. The consultants McKinsey sent are useless. They keep asking for documentation that does not exist. Because I wrote the documentation. I said, in my head, where it was safe from people who do not understand what they are reading. I walked into the NOC, my NOC. The screens were a mess of red alerts and error logs. 3 consultants in expensive suits were huddled around a terminal, looking like they were trying to perform surgery with a spork. "Everybody out," I said. The consultants looked up. One of them opened his mouth to protest. I said out. They left. They practically ran. I sat down at my workstation. My fingers found the keyboard, like old friends. I cracked my knuckles. I took a deep breath, and I started typing. 6 hours later, the platform was back online. Not perfect, not optimized, but functional. I had rebuilt the bridges, restored the connections, rewritten the scripts that tied everything together. The warning lights blinked off. Green. Beautiful. Soothing green. Marcus handed me a coffee. The good stuff. from the executive kitchen. "How did you do that?" he asked. "I built it." I said, "I know where all the pieces go." The settlement came a week later. Harrison offered me a permanent position. Chief Infrastructure Officer, equity stake, board seat. I declined. Instead, I took the consulting contract. $800 an hour. Full autonomy. No Brandon. No Madison. No vibes. They tried to give me Brandon's old office. I declined that too. Gave me the basement server room instead. It smells like burnt plastic and recycled air. It is perfect. Brandon was reassigned to strategic initiatives, which is corporate speak for we cannot fire the founder's son, but we can make him irrelevant. Last I heard, he is exploring Web3 opportunities. Whatever that means. Madison started a podcast about toxic tech culture. I listened to one episode. It was mostly ads for meditation apps. The platform stabilized. The users came back. The stock price recovered. I make more money in a month now than I used to make in 6. I bought a new car. I named it the Override. Sometimes, when I am working late and listening to the hum of the servers, I miss the chaos of being an employee. I miss the camaraderie of the NOC. But then I check my bank account, and I remember competence is expensive, disrespect is unaffordable, and revenge. Revenge is just efficient resource allocation. Big thanks for watching. You beautiful chaos agents. Smash that subscribe button or the next system crash might just forget your data. Until next time, keep your backups current and your enemies guessing.